They conquered worlds with ease, then a human warship got in their way. From the cramped, dimly lit bridge of the HSS Wanderer, the planet Viridia was a perfect, heartbreaking emerald. It spun slowly on the main view screen, a vision of life against the hard vacuum of space. From this distance, one could almost ignore the alien fleet that surrounded it. Dozens of ships, each a perfect geometric crystal, hung in the void. They didn't reflect the starlight. They seemed to drink it, leaving black, sharp-edged holes in the cosmos. They were the Shard Dominion, and they were committing a murder so silent and methodical it defied all known metrics of war. Captain Lisa Reeves watched, her knuckles white where she gripped the arm of her command chair. The Wanderer was running on minimal power, its small frame tucked deep within the turbulent ammonia clouds of a nameless gas giant. They were ghosts, tasked with watching, and the things they had witnessed over the last 48 hours would haunt them forever. "Log it," Reeves said, her voice a low, hard thing in the quiet bridge. Another city gone. On the screen, a network of light that had been a sylvan metropolis simply ceased. There was no explosion, no fire, no satisfying cinematic violence. One of the crystalline ships had fired a beam of colorless energy, and a wave of transformation had spread across the continent below. The lush, kilometers-tall forest that covered Viridia had turned to glittering, fragile glass. Then, as the resonance wave passed, the glass forest shattered, collapsing into a fine, sparkling dust that caught the light of the system's sun. The city, and everything in it, was gone. "They're not conquering," whispered Ensign Gable from the sensor station, his face pale in the gloom. "They're sterilizing." Reeves nodded, her gut churning with a cold fury. For 2 days, they had recorded this. The Shard Dominion moved with the flawless, unnerving precision of a single mind. They didn't communicate with radio waves or lasers, but with pulses of light that rippled through their crystalline hulls, a silent conversation of hive mind directives. They had shattered Viridia's meager orbital defenses in minutes, and now they were patiently, methodically erasing every trace of Sylvan civilization. Every city, every farming commune, every great bioluminescent grove. It was her duty as a human systems alliance officer to follow protocol. Even now, communications, she said, her voice firm, broadcast the standard non-aggression warning on all channels. Her communications officer, a young man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the universe, nodded shakily. "Aye, Captain. Broadcasting." The message was a relic of a more optimistic time, a formal declaration of principle that felt absurd in the face of such absolute annihilation. "To the invading fleet, this is the human system's scout wanderer. Your actions are a violation of all civilized conduct. Cease this massacre immediately. You are hereby warned." For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a single crystalline ship, a sleek destroyer-class shard, broke from the main formation and turned toward them. A response flickered across the Wanderer's comm system, not in words, but in a raw data packet of translated thought command. Variable, unidentified. Designation, annoyance. Action, erase. Expend minimal energy. "Captain," Gable yelled. "That destroyer, it's powering weapons. They're firing." Reeves didn't hesitate. She had seen enough. The mission was to observe, but survival was the prerequisite for reporting. "Damage report," she snapped, her voice cutting through the rising panic. "Get us out of here now? Plot a jump, any jump, I don't care where." The Wanderers shuddered violently as the destroyer's beam grazed their shields. The small scout ship, never built for combat, screamed in protest as its engineer rerouted every ounce of power to the FTL drive. The stars on the view screen elongated, twisted into streaks of impossible color, and then the HSS Wanderer was gone, leaving the Shard Dominion to its silent, glittering work of turning a world into a tomb. The HSS Wanderer limped back to Keystone, a secret forward base hidden inside a hollowed-out asteroid, its comms array fried, and its hull scored by the single glancing blow from the Dominion destroyer. Captain Reeves, looking haggard and years older, bypassed all standard debriefing protocols and transmitted her data directly to Earth Defense Command with the highest possible priority classification. Within hours, she was standing in the primary strategy room of the EDC, a cavernous, secure facility buried deep beneath the granite of Cheyenne Mountain. The room was centered around a massive holographic display table, and on it, the final hours of the Sylvan civilization played out in silent, high-fidelity horror. Admiral Stanforth, a man whose placid features and steady gaze were the result of a career spent weathering crises, stood with representatives of the Unified Earth Security Council, their faces grim in the flickering hollow light. They watched the crystalline ships move in patterns of impossible, geometric perfection. There was no wasted motion, no sign of individual command. The fleet acted as one, a single, unified organism of destruction. The hollow display zoomed in, showing the effect of the Dominion's primary weapon. Their coordination is absolute. An analyst, a young woman with terrified eyes, stated, her voice barely a whisper. It's not training, it's instinct. A single mind, controlling 1,000 blades. Another analyst, a heavy-set man with a background in xenobiology, pointed a trembling finger at the display. The weapon, it's a resonance cascade. Our initial analysis shows it targets the carbon-to-carbon bonds in organic life. It destabilizes them, causing a rapid, forced crystallization. He swallowed hard. It's not a weapon for conquering armies. It's a tool for eradicating ecosystems. The council members, politicians, and diplomats used to wars fought for territory or resources were silent. This was something else entirely. This was pest control on a planetary scale. Admiral Stanforth finally spoke, his calm voice cutting through the heavy atmosphere. They don't see a difference between a forest and a city, he said, his eyes never leaving the horrifying spectacle on the table. To them, all organic life is just chaos to be ordered, and their order is extinction. A counselor from the Pan-African Coalition looked up, his expression ashen. Admiral, what kind of conventional response can we mount against this? Our fleet is designed to fight enemies who think like we do. Stanforth interrupted, his gaze sweeping across the room. Enemies who value infrastructure, who take ground, who have logistical weaknesses. The Shard Dominion has none of that. They are a force of nature with a singular, logical purpose: expansion and sterilization. Their logic is their greatest weapon. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. Therefore, we cannot fight them conventionally. We must fight them with the one thing they cannot model, the one thing they will never understand. He looked directly at the Security Council chairperson. We must fight them with human chaos. A murmur went through the room. Chaos was not a word military leaders typically employed as a strategy. For the last 50 years, Stanforth continued, his voice resonating with authority, we have developed our fleet along accepted galactic lines. Clean energy, efficient shielding, predictable tactics. We did this to be good neighbors. The Shard Dominion are not neighbors. They are an exterminator. While we built a modern military, we also maintained a shadow project. A program dedicated to the kind of warfare we swore we'd left behind. Asymmetrical, unpredictable, and brutally effective. He straightened, his decision made. He felt a chilling familiarity with this kind of foe, not from any space battle, but from humanity's own dark history with ideologies of purity. He knew that humanity's greatest flaws, their stubbornness, their emotional volatility, their glorious, chaotic, and utterly illogical individualism, were now their only hope. I'm requesting you activate the Bulwark program, he stated, his voice ringing with finality. Immediately, the HSS Bulwark was not a beautiful ship. Moored within the cavernous, artificially lit interior of the Keystone Forward Base, it lacked the elegant lines of an Alliance cruiser or the gleaming white of a diplomatic vessel. It was brutalist and functional, a dense wedge of dark gray armor plating, exposed power conduits, and weapon emplacements that seemed almost too large for its frame. It looked less like a ship designed for exploration and more like a sharpened instrument of violence with an engine bolted to the back. Captain Elias Vance stood on the observation deck overlooking the docking bay, nursing a cup of coffee as he watched the final preparations. He was a man accustomed to order, a by-the-book commander who had built a career on precision and adherence to protocol, which made him, he reflected grimly, a deeply ironic choice to captain the most chaotic and unconventional warship humanity had ever built. The door behind him hissed open and Admiral Stanforth entered, his presence filling the space with a quiet gravity. "She's ready, Elias," Stanforth said, coming to stand beside him at the viewport. "She's a beast, sir," Vance replied, his eyes tracing the lines of the bulwark. "I've read the specs. Half of them feel like they belong in a theoretical physics journal, not an engineering manual." "She needs to be," Stanforth said. "Captain, the bulwark is the finest single combat vessel humanity has ever produced. She is also our best, and perhaps only, chance. Your mission is to take her to the Arcturus system, plant a sensor net, and observe. You are a ghost. You will not engage unless you are fired upon. Is that understood?" "Perfectly, Admiral," Vance said, his voice betraying none of his internal reservations. "We are the tripwire." "Good. Your crew has been assembled. They're the best I could find, handpicked for their unique talents." Stanforth handed Vance a datapad. "Get to know them. You launch in 6 hours." On the bridge of the bulwark, Vance met his new command team. The space was as brutally functional as the ship's exterior, all dark metal and glowing orange tactical displays. Lieutenant Eva Rostova, his new tactical officer, was a sharp, intense woman with eyes that seemed to see patterns in everything. She was already studying the preliminary data on the Shard Dominion, her fingers flying across her console. Chief Engineer Kenji Tanaka, by contrast, was a whirlwind of manic energy, a cup of coffee permanently attached to his hand. He was bouncing on the balls of his feet as he ran final diagnostics. "Her stealth systems are revolutionary, Captain," Tanaka said, his words coming in a rapid-fire burst. "A layered system of energy absorption and gravitational lensing. They won't see us. And the experimental slipstream drive? It can execute micro-jumps inside a system that are almost instantaneous. They won't catch us, either." Vance nodded, impressed despite himself. He had chosen Rostova for her almost unnerving intuition, her ability to see the why behind an enemy's move. He'd chosen Tanaka because the man treated engineering not as a science, but as a creative art form, constantly jury-rigging and improving systems in ways their designers never intended. He had chosen a crew of brilliant rule-breakers. "Lieutenant Rostova, your initial assessment?" Vance asked, moving to the central holographic display. Rostova looked up, her expression one of focused intensity. "They're a hive mind, sir. Pure logic. They follow the path of least resistance, the most mathematically optimal course of action in any engagement. That's their greatest strength." She paused, a slight, dangerous smile touching her lips. "And their greatest weakness. They will never expect a single ship to do something illogical." Vance felt the full, crushing weight of his command settle onto his shoulders. He was a man of logic and order, put in charge of a ship and crew designed to weaponize chaos. He had been handed a loaded gun, pointed at an existential threat, and given the strict order not to pull the trigger unless the enemy fired first. He looked at the determined faces of his crew, at the humming, powerful systems of the bulwark, and felt a profound sense of dread. The Shard Dominion might be logical, but Vance knew from a lifetime of experience that logic rarely survived first contact with humanity. The HSS bulwark hung silently in the shadow of a colossal ice chunk, one of millions grinding against each other in the majestic rings of the gas giant, Chrysor. On the bridge, the only light came from the soft glow of consoles and the immense, beautiful, and terrifying image on the main view screen. The Shard Dominion had arrived in the Arcturus system. Their fleet materialized from FTL not with a flash, but by simply appearing, their crystalline hulls resolving out of the void as if they had been there all along. They moved without haste toward the system's primary moon, Arcturus II, a bustling, independent trading hub populated by a motley collection of species who had carved out a life on the galactic frontier. The crew of the bulwark watched in disciplined silence as the Dominion began its assault. There was no declaration of war, no demand for surrender. The attack was as sterile and impersonal as a mathematical equation. Crystalline ships moved into an optimal dispersal pattern and fired. Beams of that same resonance energy lanced out, striking the moon's meager defense grid. The small orbital platforms didn't explode. They crystallized and then shattered, their fragments joining the moon's faint ring system. "They're not even bothering to land," Rostova murmured, her eyes wide as she analyzed the tactical data. They're just scouring the surface from orbit, targeting major energy signatures. The colonial government, power plants, spaceport. Vance finished for her, his voice tight. Every instinct screamed at him to act, but his orders were absolute. Observe. Report. Do not engage. The bulwark was a scalpel, and he was forbidden to use it, forced instead to watch a butcher at work. He felt less like a captain and more like a coward. For an hour, they watched. They recorded the Dominion's flawless formations, the efficiency of their weapons, the cold, irrefutable logic of their method. It was vital intelligence that would save billions of lives back home. That was the mantra Vance repeated to himself, the cold comfort he clung to as a world died on his view screen. Then Rostova's head snapped up from her console. Sir, I'm detecting a small vessel breaking from the dark side of the moon. Low energy signature, civilian classification. It's making a run for it. Vance leaned forward. Put it on a secondary screen. A small, ungainly transport appeared, a boxy ship clearly not designed for speed. It was fleeing desperately, its engines flaring with maximum, inefficient thrust. Almost immediately, a single Dominion destroyer, a sleek, razor-sharp shard of a ship, detached from the main fleet and changed course, accelerating with an effortless grace that sealed the transport's fate. They're not even hailing the transport. The XO, Commander Thorne, said grimly. They're just moving to destroy it. Eva, Vance said, his voice dropping, addressing Rostova by her first name, something he rarely did on the bridge. Life signs. On that transport. Rostova's fingers flew across her console. Her face, already pale, lost another shade of color. She looked up, her gaze meeting Vance's across the bridge. Sensors confirm the transport is a school vessel, sir. A refugee ship from the Academy on the moon's far side. Life signs are they're small. Mostly juveniles, sir. From half a dozen different species. The air on the bridge grew thick and heavy. The disciplined silence was replaced by a coiled, unbearable tension. Juveniles. Children. Vance turned to his XO. What's the probability they escape, Thorne? Thorne didn't need to consult his console. The answer was obvious. 0, sir. The destroyer is faster and will be in weapons range in 90 seconds. 90 seconds. Vance stared at the tactical display, at the large, predatory triangle of the Dominion destroyer closing in on the tiny, helpless square of the school ship. He thought of his own children, their faces clear in his mind's eye. He thought of his orders, the strategic importance of this mission, the billions of lives his intelligence could save. It was a simple, logical calculation. The lives of a few dozen children versus the lives of billions. The needs of the many outweighing the needs of the few. It was the cold, hard math of command. And in that moment, Elias Vance knew he was about to throw the entire equation into a fire. He had been chosen for this command because Stanforth believed in human chaos. And what was more chaotic, more beautifully, terribly human, than sacrificing the logical for the moral? He stood up, his chair sighing softly in the silent bridge. Every eye was on him. Sometimes, he said, his voice quiet but carrying to every corner of the room. The most logical choice is the wrong one. He turned to his tactical officer. Lieutenant Rostova, plot a firing solution on that destroyer's drive system. Use the rattlesnake package. Rostova's head shot up, a fierce, incredulous light in her eyes. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. Aye, Captain. Firing solution locked. Vance faced the engineering station. Tanaka, give me everything you've got. I want the engines screaming. From the comm, Tanaka's voice was a shot of pure adrenaline. You got it, Captain. The beast is awake. Vance took one last look at the view screen. The destroyer was seconds from firing. We're about to get loud, he said. The HSS Bulwark did not simply exit the rings of Chrysor. It erupted. Like a predator bursting from cover, the human warship exploded into the open, its dark hull a stark contrast to the glittering ice and dust. On the bridge of the Dominion destroyer, the sudden appearance of the unknown vessel registered as a logical impossibility. Their long-range scans of the rings had shown nothing. The ship should not have been there. It was a contradiction, and the Shard Dominion did not tolerate contradictions. Before its unified consciousness could fully process the new variable, the bulwark fired. It wasn't a conventional missile volley. From launch tubes along its dorsal spine, the ship released 6 large projectiles. Mid-flight, these projectiles shattered, not in an explosion, but in a clean, blossoming release. Each one became a swarm of 50 smaller, independently guided warheads. 300 rattlesnake munitions streaked across the void, an overwhelming wave of intelligent metal. The destroyer's automated point defense systems, designed to track and eliminate a dozen, perhaps 24 incoming threats, were instantly saturated. The system tried to calculate firing solutions for 300 targets moving in erratic, unpredictable patterns. It was like trying to count every drop of water in a tidal wave. The system failed. Dozens of the warheads slammed into the destroyer's crystalline hull. They didn't detonate with brute force. They burrowed in and then unleashed a focused electromagnetic pulse designed by Tanaka to disrupt crystalline energy pathways. The destroyer's powerful drive system, a marvel of efficient energy transfer, flared with a brilliant, silent scream of light and then died. The sleek, predatory ship was now just a drifting, powerless shard of crystal. "Target is neutralized," Rostova announced, her voice a mixture of awe and professional calm. "Their main drive is offline. Take us in," Vance commanded. "Shield the transport with our hull." The bulwark surged forward, ignoring the destroyer's frantic, inaccurate fire from its few remaining secondary weapon emplacements. It positioned itself deliberately between the aggressor and the helpless school ship, its own armor absorbing the stray shots on the bridge of the unassailable truth. Archon Obsidian processed the event. The data was irrefutable but illogical. A warship of unknown design had revealed itself, sacrificing the tactical advantage of stealth to protect a non-combatant vessel of negligible value. It had utilized a saturation weapon system of unexpected sophistication and then deliberately placed itself in harm's way. The action served no logical strategic purpose. It was inefficient. It was chaotic, logical contradiction, the Archon broadcast to its entire fleet consciousness. Warform prioritizes non-combatant variables. Purpose, unknown. Recalculating threat assessment. This single variable requires scrutiny. The hive mind, which had been focused on the systematic sterilization of the moon below, shifted its attention. The new variable was too anomalous to ignore. Divert primary fleet vector, the Archon commanded. Objective, isolate and analyze the anomaly. On the bulwark, alarms began to shriek across the bridge. "Captain," Thorne yelled, pointing at the main tactical display. "The main fleet is turning. They're all turning toward us." The screen showed dozens, then hundreds of Dominion ships disengaging from their orbital bombardment and altering their course. Their new target was the bulwark. "We don't have time to dock," Vance snapped. "Tanaka, give me the emergency transporter. Now." "It's a prototype, Captain." The engineer's voice crackled over the comm. "It's never been tested on mixed-species life forms. The coherence. We don't have a choice." Vance roared. "Lock onto their life signs and bring them over." Inside the small school ship, the terrified children and their teachers huddled together, watching the strange, dark warship that had placed itself between them and death. Suddenly, they were engulfed in a shimmering column of blue light. For a disorienting second, they felt a strange pulling sensation, like their very atoms were being unraveled and restitched. Then, they were standing on the solid deck of the bulwark's main cargo bay, surrounded by armed human marines. The air was warm, the gravity normal. They were alive. "All refugees aboard," a marine shouted over the comm, "cargo bay sealed." The moment the confirmation came through, Vance was already issuing his next command. "Tanaka, get us out of here. Full power to the slipstream drive. Take us into the dust clouds in the outer system." The bulwark's engine screamed, pushing the ship away from the disabled transport just as the first wave of the Dominion fleet arrived. The view screen filled with the terrifying image of the Shard Armada accelerating toward them, a unified wall of crystalline death. The ship lurched as the slipstream drive engaged, folding space for a brief, gut-wrenching instant before depositing them thousands of kilometers away, heading for the cover of a nearby nebula. For a long moment, the bridge was silent, the crew catching their breath, the adrenaline of the last few minutes slowly beginning to recede. They had done it. They had faced a Dominion destroyer and won. They had saved the children. Then they looked at the tactical display. The entire Shard Dominion fleet, hundreds of vessels strong, was now in pursuit. Their red icons on the hollow display were a relentless tide, a swarm moving with a singular, unified purpose. To analyze the anomaly, to understand the chaos, to erase the HSS bulwark and everyone on it. The exhilaration of their victory vanished, replaced by the cold, stark terror of what they had just unleashed. They hadn't just saved a school bus. They had kicked the galaxy's deadliest hornet's nest, and then painted a target on Earth's front door. The Serpent's Veil Nebula was a graveyard of newborn stars, a chaotic swirl of incandescent hydrogen and opaque dust clouds that played havoc with even the most advanced sensor arrays. It was the perfect place to hide, and the perfect place for an ambush. Inside this cosmic storm, the HSS Bulwark met its new squadron. The HSS Aegis, Vanguard, and Javelin were sister ships, all built under the same shadow program, all representing humanity's secret, desperate gamble. Captain Vance stood on his bridge, watching the three ships resolve on his view screen as they emerged from the glowing dust. He was expecting a formal reprimand, a court-martial, a message from Admiral Stanforth ordering him to surrender himself and his ship for gross insubordination. He had disobeyed a direct order, revealed their most advanced warship, and single-handedly provoked the most dangerous enemy humanity had ever encountered. The comm channel chirped, and Admiral Stanforth's face appeared on the main screen. His expression was as unreadable as ever. "Captain Vance," the Admiral began, his voice devoid of emotion, "you have disobeyed a direct order, compromised a vital intelligence-gathering mission, and initiated hostilities with a superior force." Vance steeled himself. "Yes, Admiral. The responsibility is mine alone." "Correct," Stanforth said. A long, heavy pause hung in the air. "You also saved the lives of 34 non-combatants, confirmed the enemy's genocidal intentions beyond any doubt, and provided us with our first and only viable strategic path forward." Vance blinked, thrown off balance. "Sir, you didn't just kick the hornet's nest. Captain, you showed us how to fight the hornets. You've shown them we're unpredictable." Stanforth's eyes seemed to burn with a cold fire. "Now, I need you to prove we're ungovernable. Your squadron of 4 is hereby designated Task Force Chimera. Your new mission is to buy us time. Harass them, confuse them, bleed them, make them regret ever learning the word human. You will execute Protocol Chimera. Good luck, Captain." Stanforth out. The transmission ended, leaving Vance in stunned silence. He hadn't been reprimanded. He'd been promoted and given command of a ghost fleet with a single, impossible objective: delay an armada. Protocol Chimera was a doctrine born from humanity's darkest moments of history, a guerrilla warfare strategy scaled up for the void. It was a symphony of chaos, and Vance was its conductor. For the next week, Task Force Chimera turned the Serpent's Veil into a slaughterhouse. They never engaged the main Dominion fleet directly. Instead, they hunted the fringes. Using the nebula's dust clouds for cover, they would descend upon the Shard's crystalline supply tenders and scout vessels like a pack of wolves. Their attacks were a terrifying blend of coordination and chaos. Tanaka's slipstream drives allowed the 4 ships to perform coordinated micro-jumps, appearing on Dominion sensors in multiple locations at once. One moment, a single ship would appear on the left flank. The next, 3 would appear on the right. To the rigid, logical mind of the Shard Dominion, the squadron of 4 appeared to be a fleet of 40, a phantom army that struck from nowhere and vanished into the swirling gas. Archon Obsidian, on the bridge of the unassailable truth, was forced to slow its main advance. Its perfect, logical formation was useless here. The human ships refused to engage in a predictable line battle. They fought like insurgents, like terrorists, a chaotic swarm of stinging insects that could not be pinned down. The Archon's hive mind, a marvel of processing power, struggled to impose order on the illogical mess. It was being bled by 1,000 tiny cuts, and its patience was wearing thin. The breaking point came during a raid on a Dominion sensor outpost. Task Force Chimera executed a flawless pincer movement, with the Bulwark and Vanguard drawing fire while the Aegis and Javelin moved in for the kill. But the Dominion had adapted. They had laid a trap as the Aegis closed in, Two hidden destroyers powered up and decloaked, catching the human ship in a deadly crossfire. The Aegis's shields, battered from a week of constant fighting, collapsed. Instantly, resonance beams tore through its hull, silencing its weapons and crippling its engines. "Mayday! Mayday!" came the frantic voice of the Aegis's captain, a woman named Anya Sharma. "We're hit bad, Elias. Engines are gone. Life support is failing." Vance's blood ran cold. He saw the tactical situation in an instant. The Aegis was dead. In the water, a helpless target. The logical move was to cut their losses, to retreat, and preserve the other three ships. It was the correct military decision. "All ships, fall back," commanded Thorn, his XO, already anticipating the order. "No," Vance said, his voice a low growl. The bridge crew froze. "Sir," Thorn questioned. "We can't save them. It's a trap." Vance's eyes were locked on the icon of the stricken Aegis. He thought of Anya, a good officer, a friend. He thought of her crew. "We don't leave our people behind," he said, his voice ringing with an authority that left no room for argument. "Vanguard, Javelin, provide covering fire on those destroyers. Bulwark is going in." The Bulwark dove headfirst into the enemy's kill zone. It was a completely illogical, insane move. It was suicide. And it was the one thing the Shard Dominion could never have predicted. The rescue of the HSS Aegis was a victory, but a costly one. Task Force Chimera escaped with the crippled ship in tow, but they had paid a heavy price in ammunition, fuel, and hull integrity. They limped to a new hiding place in a desolate, asteroid-choked region of space known as the Grinder, a place where dead stars had long ago collided, leaving a treacherous maze of spinning rock and lethal radiation. Here, they learned the Shard Dominion had adapted again. Archon Obsidian, having failed to counter the humans' chaotic squadron tactics, had deployed a new strategy. It saturated the region with swarms of smaller, semi-autonomous crystalline hunter-killers. These shards were the size of fighters, fast and agile, and they learned. Each swarm was connected to the hive mind, but given limited autonomy to patrol, hunt, and learn from human movements. The Grinder was no longer a hiding place. It had become a hunting ground, and the humans were the prey. The HSS Vanguard was the first to fall into the new trap. While on patrol, it was ambushed by a swarm of over 100 shards that emerged from the shadows of a massive iron asteroid. The Vanguard's point defense systems were overwhelmed. Crystalline projectiles, small but incredibly dense, hammered the ship's hull, bypassing its shields through sheer numbers. Within minutes, its engines were destroyed, and its communication systems were shredded. "We have to get them out," Vance said on the bridge of the Bulwark, the tactical display painting a grim picture. The Vanguard was a sitting duck, and the main Dominion fleet was already moving to converge on its position. "We can't get close enough," Commander Thorn argued, his face tight with strain. "Those swarms are everywhere. They'll tear us apart before we're within transporter range." Vance knew he was right. They had no way to fight the swarms and the main fleet at the same time. Any attempt at a conventional rescue was doomed. He looked at the icon of the Vanguard, blinking helplessly on the map, and felt the familiar, agonizing weight of command. He had saved one ship. He could not save another, but he could save its crew. "Patch me through to the Vanguard," he ordered. The face of the Vanguard's captain, a grim-faced man named Cole, appeared on the screen, the bridge behind him lit by the red glow of emergency lights and the white-hot glare of electrical fires. "Elias," Cole said, his voice strained. "Good to see you, you old son of a bitch. I think this is it for us." "Not yet, it isn't, Ben," Vance replied, his own voice steady. "Listen to me carefully. I need you to vent your reactor core. Create the biggest energy flare you can. It will blind their sensors. Give your crew time to get to the escape pods." Cole stared at him for a long moment, the understanding dawning in his eyes. He was being asked to destroy his own ship. "And what about you?" "We'll give them something else to chase," Vance said simply. A slow, weary smile touched Cole's lips. "Understood, Captain. It's been an honor." The screen went dark. Vance turned to his own crew. They had heard the exchange. They knew what was coming. "Thorn, coordinate with the Javelin and the Aegis. Pick up those pods the second they're clear. No one gets left behind." He then opened a channel to the entire task force. This is Captain Vance of the HSS Bulwark. Effective immediately, I am invoking the last stand mandate. All other vessels are to withdraw from this sector and escort the survivors to safety. We will hold this position. Sir, Rostova said, her voice quiet but intense at his side. There's no holding this position. It's a death sentence. I know, Vance said, his gaze fixed on the tactical display where the main Dominion fleet was drawing closer. But we can choose the battlefield. On the other side of the system, Archon Obsidian registered the massive energy flare from the vanguards. Self-destruct. It was a logical, if desperate, move to allow the escape of organic personnel units. Then, it registered something else. The primary anomaly, the HSS Bulwark, was not retreating. It was turning to face the Dominion fleet. Alone, hypothesis, the primary chaotic variable is attempting to create a diversion, the Archon concluded. Probability of success, 0.001%. Action, ignore secondary variables. Focus all assets on the primary. The source of the chaos must be erased. Believing it had finally cornered its quarry, Archon Obsidian focused its entire will, the combined consciousness of its vast fleet, on the destruction of the lone human ship. The hunt was over. The extermination could begin. The HSS Bulwark, battered and bleeding atmosphere from a dozen wounds, did not flee. It dove. With the full might of the Shard Dominion converging on its position, Captain Vance steered his dying ship directly into the swirling, violent storms of the nearby gas giant. It was a move of pure desperation, a final act of defiance against a foe that dealt only in certainties. The ship screamed as it hit the upper atmosphere. The view screen, which had shown the cold, clear void of space, was now a maelstrom of roiling orange and purple clouds. Alarms blared across the bridge as the ship was buffeted by winds that moved at thousands of kilometers per hour and crushed by pressures that threatened to buckle its already compromised hull. Hull integrity at 40% and dropping. Tanaka's voice yelled over the deafening groan of tortured metal. The atmospheric pressure is trying to tear us apart. Captain, I can't hold her together for much longer. Just give me a few minutes. Kenji, Vance grunted, his hands gripping his command chair as the bridge pitched violently. Rostova, where are they? They've surrounded the planet, sir, the tactical officer replied, her face illuminated by the red glow of warning lights. Holding in high orbit. They're waiting for us to either be crushed or come out. They think they have us trapped. They're not wrong about the crushed part. Thorn, the XO, muttered, wiping sweat from his brow. They've made a tactical error, Vance said, a grim smile touching his lips. They're logical. They've calculated that no ship could survive in this atmosphere for long, and no ship could fire accurately from within it. They're waiting for us to make the logical choice, emerge and be destroyed. He looked around at his bridge crew, seeing not fear, but a shared, terrible resolve in their eyes. We're about to do something illogical. He turned to his navigator. Plot a slingshot trajectory around the planet's core. Use the high-gravity bands to give us one last burst of speed. To Tanaka, he ordered, divert everything you have left, life support, internal gravity, everything except bridge systems, to the forward shields and the main weapon bus. I want our last shot to be our best. Aye, Captain, came the strained replies. The bulwark plunged deeper into the gas giant's hellish embrace. For what felt like an eternity, the crew fought to keep their ship from being torn asunder. On the unassailable truth, Archon Obsidian observed with cold patience. The anomaly had trapped itself. The chaos had been contained. It was only a matter of time. Variable is contained. Probability of escape is null. Awaiting its destruction. To proceed, the Archon broadcast to its fleet. Then, the impossible happened. The bulwark, instead of being crushed, used the planet's own immense gravity as a weapon. It swung around the dense core and was flung back out towards the upper atmosphere with breathtaking velocity. It burst from the clouds like a bullet fired from a cannon, its hull glowing red-hot from the atmospheric friction, trailing fire and Plasma.it was aiming directly for the unassailable truth. Rostova. Now, Vance roared. Targeting solution locked on the flagship's command node, she yelled back over the cacophony. It's the only shot we'll get. Tanaka, I need one last thing from you. Vance said into the comm, the overload protocol. For that last torpedo. It's a dirty weapon, Captain, Tanaka protested. It'll create a feedback loop that will fry our own systems. That's the point, Vance said. Fire everything we have left. The HSS Bulwark, in its final moments of life, unleashed its last defiant scream. Its remaining cannons fired. Its missile tubes spat fire. And from its primary torpedo bay, it launched a single, modified, overload torpedo. The weapon wasn't designed to just explode, it was designed to hack. Its warhead contained a sliver of Tanaka's chaotic genius, a logic bomb that would force the Dominion's crystalline systems into an infinite, self-contradictory loop. The barrage of fire slammed into the unassailable truth. The ship's shields flared and held against the conventional weapons, but the overload torpedo, guided by Rostova's perfect targeting solution, slipped through. It struck the command spire, a delicate crystalline latticework at the very top of the flagship. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a wave of corrupt light washed over the unassailable truth that on the bridge of his flagship, Archon Obsidian experienced. The one thing it was not designed to handle, a paradox. The human weapon did not just explode, it communicated. It fed the hive mind a recursive stream of illogical data, a self-referential loop of chaos that the Archon's logic could not solve. If this statement is true, then I am false. If I am false, then this statement is true. Query. Resolve. Recalculate. Query. Resolve. The perfect, unified consciousness of the Shard Dominion fractured. For the first time in its millennia-long existence, it was confused. The central command node of the unassailable truth began to glow, then pulse violently as it tried to process the unsolvable problem. A catastrophic logic cascade began, spreading through the flagship and then out to the rest of the fleet. Ships began to move erratically. Formations broke. The perfect, single mind had been given a migraine. The crew of the Bulwark never saw the full effect of their final gambit. The feedback from the overload torpedo's detonation sent a fatal power surge through their own ship. Systems exploded. The bridge went dark, save for the fire consuming the consoles. The ship's structural integrity, already gone, gave way completely. Vance gripped his chair as the world dissolved into fire and final, roaring silence. His last action was to activate the ship's log recorder. Let the record show, he said, his voice calm amidst the chaos. The crew of the HSS Bulwark did not yield. We did not break. We held the line. Vance out. The HSS Bulwark broke apart, its burning fragments consumed by the swirling storms of the gas giant it had used as its final weapon. It had faced an armada and, in its death, had decapitated it. The chaos had defeated the logic that at the edge of the Arcturus system. Space itself seemed to tear open. Not with the silent, orderly appearance of the shard, but with the brutal, energetic flash of raw power. One after another, hundreds of new contacts materialized from FTL, their powerful drives churning the void. The human systems defense fleet had arrived. IT was a force unlike anything the galaxy had seen from the upstart species. Massive new dreadnoughts, their hulls bristling with heavy cannons and missile pods, formed the core of the fleet. Sleek carriers launched swarms of fighters that moved into perfect combat formations. Cruisers, destroyers, and frigates filled the gaps, forming a single, unified battle line of overwhelming force. They were a wall of gray, human-made steel, silent and menacing. Before them, the Shard Dominion fleet milled in chaos. The logic cascade caused by the Bulwark's final gambit had shattered their unity. Without the clear, directing will of Archon Obsidian, individual ships and smaller clusters moved erratically, their crystalline hulls pulsing with confused, dissonant light. Some tried to reform their perfect geometric patterns, while others simply drifted, their systems still trying to resolve an unsolvable paradox. They were a body without a head, a weapon without a hand to aim it. On the bridge of the HSS Indomitable, the new fleet flagship, Admiral Stanforth watched the spectacle on his view screen. His face was a mask of cold, righteous anger. For weeks, he had been forced to wait, to gather his strength while Vance and his small squadron bled to buy him this single moment. The price had been paid in full. It was time to collect the debt. Open a fleet-wide channel, Stanforth commanded, his voice low and dangerous. Broadcast on all frequencies. I want them to hear it. His image appeared on the screens of every ship in the system, human and shard alike. To the forces of the shard dominion, he began, his voice echoing across the void. I am Admiral Stanforth of the Human Systems Defense Fleet. You trespassed in our space. You murdered innocent civilians. You destroyed one of our finest ships and killed its crew. He paused, letting the silence stretch, a final, damning indictment. We are here to present you with the bill. On the bridge of a newly minted dreadnought, a young ensign stared at the view screen, her heart pounding in her chest. She saw the disorganized enemy, the fractured light of their dying logic. She saw the vast, unified power of the human fleet, poised to strike. She knew the battle was about to begin, the greatest battle in human history. But she also knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that the war had already been won. It was won by the courage of a small scout ship, by the defiance of 4 guerrilla warships, and by the ultimate sacrifice of the HSS Bulwark and its crew. Humanity was no longer on the defense. The hunt has begun.